Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mythic for Operators. Today we're going to be looking at SOCKS and reverse port forwards. So to start, we're going to go to our active callbacks page, and here we have one Poseidon agent checking in. Poseidon has a SOCKS command, so let's go ahead and look at that. Here we can see what we want to do, start or stop our SOCKS traffic, and what port we actually want to listen on. Now, Mythic uses a lot of Docker containers for various components. The Mythic server itself is also in a Docker container. Mythic uses an environment variable for the dynamic ports to allow you to specify what ports you want to make available for things like this, like SOCKS traffic. So by default, Mythic opens up ports 7000 to 7010 for you to do this sort of traffic. If we pick a port that's outside of that range, like 7020 for example, and hit task, you'll get a little notification up here and an error message and an alert up there in your notification window that the port is not being exposed through Mythic. So we can click down here, click to expand our task, the little blue plus button, and here to view standard out, standard error, you can see it's not exposed. So whenever you issue this sort of SOCKS task to Mythic, it goes to the payload type container that then issues an RPC command to Mythic to say, hey, I want to run SOCKS, please try and open up this port. And this is where we're getting the error where Mythic says, hey, that port is not being exposed, this isn't going to work, and bails out. Now, if we do pick a port that is exposed, let's say port 7000, then it'll go through, Mythic will open up that port, report back, and say everything's good to go for the agent to pick it up. We can then come over here and look at this Proxies tab, the SOCKS icon, and we can see here callback 17, local port 7000, proxy type SOCKS. So from Mythic's perspective, everything is up and going and ready to go. We can come back to our active callbacks page and see that for the agent perspective, SOCKS is started and everything is ready to go. Now the last thing we need to do here is reduce our sleep time. So right now we have a sleep time of every 10 seconds, which means that traffic is only going between Mythic and the agent once per 10 seconds. This isn't going to work for things that have shorter keep alives and timeouts like TCP connections and HTTP traffic and stuff like that. So we need to lower this, typically via sleep 0, to something that's much, much faster so that we can get a higher throughput and reduce the latency and timeouts that happen whenever we do our SOCKS traffic. So we come back over here to our terminal window. We can start modifying things that we need to do locally for SOCKS. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at our proxy chains configuration. We're going to use proxy chains as part of our toolset to do SOCKS traffic. Now, the big thing to note here is that you need to make sure to specify SOCKS 5, not SOCKS 4, and not SOCKS 4A. Then from here, we're going to specify the IP address and port that we want to send our traffic to. So Mythic is running locally for me on the same host. So I say 127.0.0.1, and then the port that we selected that is being exposed through Docker, so port 7000. At this point, everything is ready to go for you to actually do SOCKS traffic. So in our case, we can do proxy chains. We can say curl and google.com, for example. It was pretty fast, so let me scroll up. Here we can see we loaded up our configuration. We connected to port 7000 on localhost, reached out to google.com, got our traffic. So pretty easy at that point. Everything is normal SOCKS traffic. You're good to go. Again, you can always come back to the Mythic UI and look at proxies and see local port 7000, callback 17, proxy type SOCKS, everything good. Now let's look at something a little bit different, but heavily related, reverse port forwards. So if we come back to our agent, the Poseidon agent has a reverse port forward command. What we can do is start looking at the configuration options for this. So we want to start reverse port forwards. Now this local port is a little bit different than the port that we specified for SOCKS. For SOCKS, we were identifying a port for Mythic to open up on the Mythic server. That traffic then gets routed from the Mythic server through the agent out to whatever it is that you're trying to connect to. For a reverse port forward though, This local port is the port that the agent is going to open up on your target host. Whenever it gets traffic to that port that it opens up, it's going to send it back through Mythic and then connect out to this remote IP and remote port. So this will be a port that we're going to open up locally on our agent. So let's say 8085. And then we're going to connect back out to our, whatever host that we're interested in. So we'll do this same host. So we'll do 192.168.53.157. And we'll connect to, 8085. Let's do this one as 8086. So our agent will open up port 8086. We'll reach back out whenever we get a connection there through Mythic out to this IP address on port 8085. So let's hit task. Here we can see a little notification. So whenever you do this, because Mythic is going to be reaching back out to some IP address and port, Mythic will do a little test connection to see, hey, can I reach this thing? It won't stop it from happening and stop you from setting up the connections and starting reverse port forwards, but it's just more of an informational like, hey, I can or cannot reach this thing. So here we see Mythic tried to reach out to this IP address, which is the same IP address as Mythic, on port 8085. It failed naturally because we don't have anything running there yet, but it's letting you know that ahead of time. That's why this connection here started successfully, this task completed. It's just saying that nothing has come in yet, so nothing will be able to reach out. So let's go back to our terminal and let's come over here and say, all right, on Mythic, I'm going to go ahead and listen on the ports that we're going to reach back to. So we're going to reach back to port 8085. So let's go ahead and listen on port 8085. Now our remote IP address and port are listening. The agent is listening on port 8086. So now what we need to do is make a connection to port 8086, and we should see that data come back out the other side to port 8085. So let's go ahead and hit enter here. We'll make just a simple netcat connection. And now let's do some sort of data. Hello, are you there? Now, if this succeeded, we should see this data come back out on port 8085, which was over here. Here we can see we got our connection. This is the Mythic server IP. So we reached out directly to the IP address, got hello, are you there? So our traffic is going through our agent listening on port 8086 out to this remote IP and port for 8085. And of course, if we close one side of this connection, they both close, which is what we would expect. Now, if we come back here and look in the Mythic UI, this same Proxies tab shows us information about our SOCKS data, port 7000, and our reverse port forward proxy data. So here we are using a local port of 8086, that's the port the agent is opening up, reaching back out to this remote connection, this host IP address and this port. Easy way to kind of track all that. You can always close these with your agent tasking. If the agent dies for whatever reason, or you lose connectivity or whatnot, you can always, of course, kill these here as well, stopping your proxies. And it'll stay here while you're on the page, but if you refresh the page, because we don't have any more proxies running, it'll all go away. So this is a little bit different than a lot of the other stuff in Mythic, where when you delete things, they're just like a button to unhide it. These are permanently gone. Now, again, here we had our sleep at 0 to make sure our reverse port forward and our SOCKS traffic was a bit faster. Whenever you're done with that, it's always good to put your sleep back to something a bit more meaningful. So we'll do sleep 10, something just kind of lower the noise that's happening. Doing this with a asynchronous profile like HTTP will generate a large amount of traffic, since it's doing an HTTP GET request every couple of milliseconds. Just something to kind of keep note of depending on your agent. But this is generally how the flow of SOCKS and reverse port forward traffic works within Mythic. Nothing too crazy.